Hey everyone, welcome back. Today is the last video that I'm going to do to wrap up for the Chicken Keeping 101 series, and I'm excited that you're joining me today. I wanted to go over some of the things that I may not have mentioned or that other people have as frequently asked questions regarding chicken keeping and being new to chicken keeping. And of course, I'll continue to post other chicken keeping content along the way, and we've certainly not covered everything we could possibly cover about chickens. This series was just an initial to get you started. So first, buying chicks from a hatchery. I mentioned that a couple of times in a couple of different videos, kind of briefly and under different circumstances, but I didn't really delve into that. So I wanted to give you a little bit more information about that today. There are, in general, two ways that you can go about doing this. But before we get into that, something you need to know about buying from a hatchery is that you're most likely going to be buying in a straight run. And what is that? When they don't sex the chickens, so you don't know what you're getting. So if you're getting into this specifically for egg-laying hens, if you buy from a hatchery, most likely you're going to buy 10, 20 chicks, whatever the number is that you've decided upon. And you're not going to know which ones are roosters, which ones are hens, and how many of each you're going to get. So some people don't mind this as they plan to harvest whichever ones end up being roosters, so they have meat for the freezer. But just keep this in mind if you plan to go this route. That way you can be prepared to dispatch any additional roosters that you don't need or want, because you will need to do that. Remember from prior videos, I've talked about how it's really kind of one rooster to 12 to 18 hens. If there's too many roosters together with that amount of hens, or especially without, you can't just keep, a coop full of roosters. That will get very ugly very quickly. And now in general, the two categories of hatchery are something that's within driving distance to you where you live, most likely going to be a smaller, local, regional sized hatchery, or you can order them online from very well-known, well-established hatcheries that have been around for a long time. A local hatchery will typically specialize in 1 to 3 different chicken breeds. And again, they're going to be a small to mid-size operation, kind of just serving their region. If you're going to go this route, you want to look for one that has really good reviews online, or that you found out about through word of mouth, referral, that sort of thing. Someone that you know has happily and successfully ordered from this hatchery and had good results. If I were to order this way from a hatchery, this is exactly how I would do it. Some of the benefits of that are, of course, you're going to go pick them up yourself. So you get to see the conditions that they were raised in. You get to actually meet the people raising these chicks and chickens, kind of see their whole setup. If you're ordering online, make sure that you order from a well-established national hatchery. Examples of these, I'm just going to read them off from my list here, are Meyer Hatchery, that's M-E-Y-E-R, Cackle Hatchery, Freedom Ranger Hatchery, Murray McMurray Hatchery, and the Murray there is M-U-R-R-A-Y, Hoover Hatchery, and My Pet Chicken. Now, Hoover Hatchery actually supplies Tractor Supply Store and Family Farm and Home. So the chicks that you see there are coming from those hatcheries. Family Farm and Home also apparently gets chicks sometimes from Freedom Ranger Hatchery as well. This is another reason that I'm personally comfortable just getting them from those stores. Now, the reason I would caution you about ordering chicks online, first of all, there are internet scams with this situation, just like everything else these days. So you really need to watch out for that and be careful of it. And for example, you don't want to order from a hatchery that you've only seen or found out about through Facebook, for example, or maybe they only have a Facebook page and they don't have an additional outside presence somewhere else on the internet, maybe some independent reviews that you could look up and that sort of thing, and kind of verify their business. I have heard from so many others in the backyard chicken community or the homesteading community who have gotten scammed by fake Facebook profile pages, are selling all of these chicks, and they're actually not. Prior to our first year of getting chickens, I looked into that. I thought, well, I don't know what's better or what's the right thing to do, buying them at the store versus getting them from a hatchery. So I looked some hatcheries up on Facebook, and one of them was absolutely suspicious, red flags everywhere. They claim to specialize in like 40 different breeds of chicken just on one farm, and they claim to be just down the road from me, and I know where I live, and I know that that's just not the case, first of all. Some of these breeds were specialty breeds as well. And a small, mid-sized local hatchery just isn't going to have the capacity to produce all of those breeds. The prices per chick were also incredibly outrageous. And then when I sent a message asking if I could come and see the chicks personally and pick them up, letting them know that I was actually local, well within driving distance, and I prefer to avoid shipping, they said no. And there were just a lot of other red flags. One of them, of course, being in the messaging. They were already demanding payment up front, kind of in a hurry, urgency now type of fashion like these scammers often do. And we hadn't even settled on or agreed on what breeds I was going to be buying. And then overall, there just wasn't what I would consider a very typical or professional business communication back and forth. And in regards to ordering from a safer hatchery, if you will, one that you feel more comfortable ordering from online, there can be additional issues with that. For example, the first one is that, of course, sometimes chicks die in the shipping process. I've heard that hatcheries will even send you a couple of additional chicks just to account for that unfortunate reality and the likelihood that it's going to happen that way. Additionally, what happens, I guess, is that your local post office will call you as soon as they arrive and ask you to come and get them immediately. So you need to be able to drop whatever you're doing at that moment to go and pick up these chicks from the post office during their regular business hours, of course. So if you're busy working, something else going on, some other commitment, unfortunately, you have to be very available to go pick them up. I've heard stories from others who've ordered this way and they weren't able to make it to the post office to pick them up in time. The post office is closed for several days. So say that happens on a Saturday, you're not able to get there. There's Sunday, maybe Monday's a holiday. So then the chicks are just stuck inside the post office. You have to wait until they're open again to come and get them. And then they're all deceased. And the post office employees are not going to care for these chicks or feed them for you. It's not their place to do that. That's why they're calling you, asking you to come and get them immediately. So in that case, you could lose nearly all of them or all of them because of an accidental neglect situation. And because chicks are shipped within a day of being born, they aren't shipped with any food or water inside the boxes typically. And so if that happens, you're not likely going to get a refund from your hatchery either. That situation is unfortunately on you. Okay, moving on from that topic, another common question is, how do I get my chickens to go to bed at night? Well, it's pretty magical. They typically do this on their own with very little to no prompting from you at all. So they know where their home is, they know where their safety is, they know where those roosting bars are. They know that once they go inside there, they're going to be good to go and that that's where they belong for the night. They'll typically go back into the run in the coop around dusk. So they're going to go, for the purposes of how you and I might think of it, they are going to go well before the sun goes down. There will still be a little bit of daylight left when they're going back to the coop. So it's not like they're going to wait until the very last minute and there's no daylight left, or they're going to stay out and party in the yard well after dark. They're going to go in before that. Then once they're in the coop, as long as you have an automatic coop door or you're manually going down there yourself, going back and forth each night and locking them in, they should be pretty good to go. Now, I have heard of people who've had a situation where a predator made its way into the coop during the day, and then so unfortunately it was kind of lying in wait for the chickens at night. And even in those cases, I don't think that it really intended to do that on purpose. A lot of people find animals such as house cats, raccoons, possums, skunks, even sleeping in the coop during the day because those animals are nocturnal. So at some point they wandered in the coop maybe early in the morning. They're sleeping during the day, they're awakening at night when the chickens are coming in. And then I think, nature just happens, unfortunately. But I would say that's probably a rare situation that specific thing is going to happen. When I see people posting in the very large chicken groups that I'm in about predator attacks, it's usually things that are happening during the day. And not always necessarily inside the coop. It's usually outside the coop. Maybe they have a fenced-in run, but not a run with a roof on it. That's pretty common. That birds of prey, like hawk, is very common, but could be an eagle, could be something else, depending on where you live. Those types of things are getting in to the run because it doesn't have a roof on it, or just if they're out free-ranging in the yard and something gets them during the day. Now, occasionally you will have a hen or two that just doesn't understand the assignment. But you can train those hens to go in at night with everyone else. If you have a really difficult situation with that, though, you can also just leave her out and see how she fares. I have a lot of friends who do that. It seems like each time they get a new round of chicks, there's always one hen in their group that will want to do that, or that will want to roost on the top of the coop for whatever reason. And most of the time they end up being safe in that situation, but not always. I've mentioned them in a video before, but when we added the 3 laying hens in the fall of our first year with chickens, because we had just lost a few, they were coming from a different farm. I think they were just really disoriented and didn't understand their new home. And also, like I said, if you are the new hen or hens in a coop, you're at the bottom of the totem pole. You get picked on, you get left out, if you will. It's kind of a mean girls situation for sure. So 2 of them just were not comfortable sleeping in the coop at night at first. However, the bushes that they picked around our property to sleep in were very low to the ground. We could literally just walk up, pick them up very comfortably without having to climb or anything like that on our part. And then we would take them back into the coop. I think we had to do that 5 nights in a row. And then after that, they were fine. They figured it out and they're like, okay, I guess I can be in here. I'm supposed to be in here. Part of the thing too is, you know, raccoons sleep in trees and they will go pretty far up in the trees. Things like owls and hawks obviously are going to be very high up in the trees. Other predators that are ground predators, you might think, okay, you know, if they roost in a tree, then that's like half the predators that they have to worry about. But they don't roost very high up. I mean, chickens can fly. Some of them are certainly better at flying than others. Some of them will kind of fly pretty far up and then over, and then they're going to have to go right back down to the ground. Some of them fly while they're running across the ground just to kind of make them faster at running away from something. None of our chickens really fly though. And so even when they do, it's not very high up that they can go. So they end up roosting in some low bush, which is going to just expose them to pretty much any predator that could come along. And this brings me to another tip that I wanted to give just in regard to chicken keeping in general. If you wanted these chickens, you need to be checking on them frequently and paying attention to them. So obviously at least once a day, but really you should probably check on them twice a day. And if you're someone who's really busy and you work away from your home, and you're gone for long hours in the day, you may need to enlist some help from somebody else to do one of those checks per day with your chickens. At the very least, you should be checking on them in the morning. Whether that's in the summer months or the warmer months, you're just opening the run door to let everybody out. You're checking to see if they have plenty of food and water, or you already know that you filled that the night before, so they're good to go. And then again at night. I've mentioned a little bit before, but obvious reasons for this are they knock over food and water dishes constantly. Here at our house, we have a lot of squirrels and mice who think it's their food and water too. So other animals could be getting in there, eating and drinking out of their stuff, and then they don't have any. A chicken could have passed away from something else not predator related, and then you don't want that laying in the coop where the other chickens are going to have to be overnight or for several days just because you didn't think to look inside the coop or look inside the run each morning and each night. And then of course, obviously predators. Can't talk enough about the predators, but you know, something could have happened. You go to check on everybody at night and you're like, I'm missing 2. What's going on? And you look thoroughly and you don't see them, and maybe you don't see any signs of that outside your coop, but then at least you know something has happened. We'll investigate that more in the daylight, etc. Sick chickens, of course. I've done a couple of videos on that topic, and as you should know by now if you've been watching, they go downhill very quickly. So it would be important for you to know at what point did someone start showing signs of illness, and then how long did that take for that to progress with that chicken? Is anyone else starting to show signs of illness as well? If you're someone who just didn't check on them for 3 days because you're like, well, I have giant containers of food and water and I'm just not going to worry about it, you're going to be missing out on a whole lot of things going on with your flock, probably in that case. Just other things too, like the run door for us, we like to keep that open all day in the summer months when it's warmer out and our chickens free range, but their food and water stays inside the run, so they need to be able to go back and forth. We've had it a few times where the wind blew the door closed and then they couldn't get to their food and water, but thank goodness we're checking frequently enough that we could, you know, open the door for them again. And then now we have a giant stone that we roll in front of the door to keep it open during the day so that that doesn't happen. And then also just for egg collection, I do know that a lot of people, especially in the warmer months, They might not check or collect the eggs for several days at a time, and that's certainly fine if that works for you. No need to change that process. But for us, if it gets really, really hot and their coop is getting kind of warm, I don't want eggs sitting out there for more than a day in some really bad heat. And then, for example, this winter, we didn't have it happen last year, and it got, into single digits for several days in a row, but we really didn't go below 0 last year in the winter. And obviously, we have this year, the whole country is experiencing that. So this year, I've had several instances of what we call the exploded egg, and it's where, it freezes, it cracks, and then it's just of no use to you. I guess you can feed them back to your chickens if you want, but they're not in good shape, and they're literally as hard as a rock. So not meant for human consumption at that point. So then you're just losing those precious wintertime eggs that you already don't very many of in the first place. So there are all kinds of reasons to be checking on your chickens at least twice a day, I would say. If you're able to check on them more, great. So the next question that people often ask when they're new to chickens, and I had this question too, was, don't chickens poop everywhere? Like, aren't they going to be pooping all over the best parts of my yard, my sidewalk, my front steps, my deck? So yes, they do, but there are several things that you can do to kind of prevent or curb this. So first, never feed your chickens from your front steps or your deck or anything like that. They learn immediately that food source for them throughout the day, and they're definitely going to come and ask for food from you every single day if you do this. And obviously when they're there trying to get food from you, they're going to poop. Also, don't do what I did our first summer and keep food plants in pots on your deck. I thought that was going to be a great way to have strawberries right outside my door, carrots too, for that matter, so that I could just pick them as needed or wanted and not have to walk all the way down to our garden to get those sorts of things. Well, not only did the wild birds have a heyday with that, but so did our chickens. And that was something that obviously encouraged them and brought them up to the deck. And of course, they're going to poop all over your deck when they're there. And next, if you have that situation and you kind of realize the error that you've made and you're like, okay, I need to stop feeding them from my doorstep, first of all, just stop doing that. Ignore them when they come up to the door. It is really adorable, and it's them to kind of be staring at you while you're in your house and very curious and looking like they're nosy neighbors or something. But first of all, just ignore them. And then another thing you can do is just try to block off those areas temporarily. For example, our deck has 2 doors, actually. There's like a ramp for getting onto our deck that lifts up, and it, clamps in on both sides. So if we need to close that off for some reason, like let's say we were trying to keep a dog on the deck or small children for safety, we can close that off on one end. And then there's another set of steps that go down the back of the deck, and that also has doors that swing closed. So we just close those off for like a week or 2, and that helped retrain our chickens quite a bit. And then with the front step, we don't feed them from there, and that also corrected that behavior. So it hasn't been too much of an issue. One thing I've noticed with spending a lot of time observing our chickens' behavior is just that they make their rounds every single day, and they have a specific route that they tend to go. And once in a while they'll deviate from that, but most of the time they don't. So kind of similar to people, they have their daily routine, and there are parts of our woods and our yard that they walk all around. But I've noticed that they have quite a big perimeter, and they don't really come up close to the house anymore since we've kind of don't give them that reason to come up this way. But again, this might be something that you want to consider if you're about getting several chickens and you only have half an acre or 1 acre that your entire property sits on. Not to say that you can't do it, because you most certainly can. There are lots of people that do, but their chickens don't free range in the traditional sense. Typically, if you have a smaller space like that, they're going to tear up your yard if that's all you've got. They are going to be pooping very close to your house. If you have neighbors close to you and that's why you only own half an acre, then they're going to be over in your neighbor's yard, and that could be an issue as well. So you do want to think about those things. But more space to roam means more places to poop that don't have to be right next to your house. Lastly, for us, mowing the lawn regularly helps out with that. It's going to pick up any little bit of poop particles that are still there. And we don't treat our grass with any chemicals or anything like that. So we have a bagger lawnmower, so obviously that helps as well. It's going to actually pick it up and not just chop it up and disperse it all over the yard again. Any grass clippings, leaves, poop like that is going to end up in our compost pile, which is just a great full circle thing to have going on. So for us, excessive droppings from the chickens has not been an issue at all. Another question that folks have to ask themselves is, should I get a manual coop door or an automatic coop door? So that's a great question, and there are pros and cons to both of those options. We have done both. There are kind of benefits and drawbacks to both. Obviously, the big benefit with an automatic door is that you don't necessarily have to go down there immediately the same time every morning and the same time in the evening to open and then close them up at night. You can set that on a timer. Drawback obviously would be, you might get a little too comfortable not checking on the chickens at those times of day, and that's probably when you really should check on them. Also, if your coop door fails, most of them are on batteries. I think you can get some solar powered ones, or there might be some electric ones out there too, I'm sure. So if your power goes out or your batteries die in it, those are types of things you want to keep in mind. Again, the manual door is certainly cheaper. They're easy to do. You can make your own, or you can buy one really cheap. So there's some benefits along those lines with that. And then of course it forces you to check on the chickens as well. Next up, when do mature hens start laying eggs? So this is different for each breed of chicken, and then within the breeds, it's a little bit different per chicken, right? So it's not exactly the same, but for most hens, it's between 4 and 8 months of age. We have found for us, it's been 4 to 6 months, and we've tried quite a few different breeds of, I say, average backyard chickens, so the kind that you can buy at the store without having to do any special ordering, and we don't have any special breeds either. So it's been 4 to 6 months. Most of them have laid at the 4 to 5 month mark, with a couple of them not laying until about 6 months of age. One interesting thing that I've observed having a rooster though, is that the rooster will kind of know that they're going to be laying eggs soon before we do. And I don't know, they're obviously there's something going on there with nature and biology that tells him that they're ready for mating. He will not mount any hens that are not at least of this age. I noticed this last summer with the new round of 10 chicks that we had in. I was paying attention, and every time he would mount a hen, kind of like that first week that I noticed him mounting that particular hen, the following week to 2 weeks, she started laying eggs. So that's been a very interesting indicator. And of course, if you want to have an idea then of when your chicks are going to start laying, or your young adult hens, just count roughly 4 months from the time that you bought them, because again, you're usually buying them at 1 to 2 days old. So if you don't see any at the 4 month mark, don't panic. Between there and the 5 month mark, you probably will see them start to lay. And then from 5 to 6, most likely, most of them should be laying eggs by then. But again, if they're not, and you got them late in the summer, and now it's fall and winter, they're going to slow down and or not lay anyway. So don't panic. You just want to make sure they're laying by the spring. Next up, what is molting and what do I do about it? So molting is the yearly process that all chickens go through to shed their feathers and grow new ones in order to prepare for the colder winter months. This does happen with roosters too, although they don't usually have nearly as bad of a molt as hens do. So for example, we've noticed that Texas will lose a few of his wing feathers in a specific area, and he'll lose his beautiful flowy tail feathers, but they always grow back. Another interesting thing is that a hen will not do this in their first year of life. So molting is a thing that they'll do every year after that, but not when they're within that 1 year old. So I kind of realized that that was something that was really nice about being new to chicken keeping. That was one less thing I had to worry about in that first year. It happened in late summer or early fall. It can last anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks, and the length of time will vary per breed and per bird. So most of ours started in the middle of September this last year, and they went to the end of October. So we had about 6 weeks of molting for that first year. Now, it may look scary for a little bit. It's going to look like, if you aren't prepared for this, you're going to go, what in the world happened? What's going on? Are they diseased? Some of them can end up looking really, really rough, like losing all of their feathers at once. It kind of looks like they woke up with a really bad case of bedhead. The feathers can still be attached to their body as they're in the process of falling off, so then they can be all kind of backwards or bent or broken. Then they're growing in at different rates, so the feathers growing in look a little strange until they're, fully grown and out. So just know that it can be normal, because there will be feathers everywhere. Your coop, your run, all over the yard, especially just outside of your coop and run, and you You will think that someone got attacked by a predator, but probably nothing at all happened. It's just molting. Now, unfortunately, this is a stressful process for the hen and a very uncomfortable one. They typically reduce or do not lay eggs during this time. We definitely experienced that. Our egg production went right down, and you go, oh man. So this is going to happen now, and then they're hardly going to lay all winter, and you kind of wonder, like, does it seem worth it? But again, they always do bounce back, and if you're always in a rotation of kind of like having some first-year hens and then some older hens, you should still be getting some eggs. And so again, kind of going back to the fact that it's uncomfortable for them, if you have chickens that are normally cuddly and you do pick them up a lot, I would say just leave them alone during this time. Don't pick them up. Don't do anything additional that might stress them out, and don't add any stressors to their environment. Maybe don't introduce new chickens at this time or change anything dramatically inside the coop. They may behave differently. And then again, with you picking them up, pressing on any part of their body is just apparently very uncomfortable. The new feathers growing in look very interesting. You can look up pictures of that online, but you can probably understand after taking a look at those that if you were to press on those while they're trying to come in through the skin, that yeah, that might be very painful. And much like the extra care that we give them in the winter, you can give them some extra care during this molt to help get them through. So those vitamin water additives or just some extra scratch grains, extra worm treats, whatever you think is best, whatever you know they like. If they're free ranging, they're still going to be free ranging during this time because it's warmer months before winter and they still have a lot of the bugs and things outside, but they may not be able to get to as many of those things, and just making it easier for them to feel comfortable is a good thing to do during this time. I've heard a lot of people say too, if giving them the extra food support like that, then the molt is going to be less difficult. Obviously not just for them, but visually and overall, and like they'll lose feathers at a more kind of normal and consistent rate rather than like, oh, they looked okay today and then now they're bald and there's feathers everywhere. Maybe just a less dramatic molt. And last FAQ is, what is going broody? So this deserves its own separate video for sure. And I'll pull out some old footage of ours for the one hen that we had go broody so far, but I'll definitely do another video on this. Essentially the hen equivalent of having baby fever. As far as I understand, there isn't anything that you can do to influence this or prevent it. It's just a natural thing that happens for the hens. It's their strong instinctive response to want to sit on a clutch of eggs in hopes of hatching some babies. There's a lot to unpack where going broody is concerned. That's why I say it deserves its own space to discuss in more detail. You will definitely see behavior changes with your hen. However, the way that they sit on the eggs will be very different than what they normally do. The way they interact with the other chickens and your rooster, if you have one, is going to be different. It's a whole different ballgame. But in short, that's what going broody is. Lastly, if you have watched my entire series, first of all, thank you so much for doing that. And second, I hope you got a lot of helpful, useful information out of it. That's the whole point of doing this. You've probably looked up other videos and questions. That's great. So at this point, you are very much ready to go ahead and start keeping chickens. Of course, don't do it right now if you're watching this in the middle of winter. Wait until spring to go to the store and get some chicks, but you have all of the tools to get started. Go do it, have fun. There'll be a lot of learning. It's a journey, but it's totally worth it. Guys, thank you so much. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description of my video. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.